Okay,
All right, there we
we
are.
are live. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm with Dr. Stephen Turley. You received a PhD in religion or philosophy from Durham University. Is that
Yeah,
right?
Durham
Durham
University.
University.
Yeah.
And now you teach philosophy, religion, critical thought, mostly from a conservative opinion in a university or school in Pennsylvania.
I did up till about 3 years ago. Yeah, I was
Okay.
at Eastern University.
Okay.
Yeah, for
Okay.
20 years.
And we are live at the Texas Nationalist Conference, the largest secession conference in America. I wanted to talk to many of the scholars here, and I have watched your channel for years, and I've been wanting to interview you.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
The topic is a little bit different than just straight secession. I wanted to ask you a lot of the questions I asked Professor Foley. Is political polarization in America bad today, or is it not that big a problem?
Oh, it's a huge problem.
So it's an actual problem.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like, we lived through the 60s, we survived, it's fine. You don't agree with that?
No.
Okay.
No. I think we're in a whole different situation right now.
Okay.
So scholars are actually calling it de-alignment. So what we saw it with Brexit, we saw it with Trump, where support for certain issues or candidates are now starting to cut across the political grain.
Right.
So but our political parties don't know what to do with that.
Okay.
So what happened in Britain, and that's probably, so if we objectify it a bit, what happened in Britain was working class voters voted for an issue, Brexit,
Right.
that their members of parliament, Labour,
Right.
were steadfastly opposed to. They
Right.
did not support that. So when it finally came down to whether or not it was going to be implemented or not, Boris Johnson said, we're all for it. We're going to do a Brexit. And so in December of 2019, regions of the UK voted for the Conservative Tories that had never voted for the Tories before, like ever. And it was just because of this mass exodus of the working class away from Labour, that was their party,
Right.
to the Conservatives. But then once that happened, then COVID hit and all that, Boris Johnson and the Tories didn't know what to do with them because they occupy such a different cultural space.
And now they were in their party.
Exactly. And now they were in their party.
Right.
What do we do? How do we handle? How do we represent you? They didn't have any idea. Our Republicans are going through the exact same thing right now. I forget. I think it was Politico that called it political schizophrenia. The Republican Party doesn't know what it is. Is it a populist party or is it a Bush wing neocon party? What is it? You guys are facing that here in Austin with Ken Paxton versus the Bush wing of the Republican Party. They're two incommensurate parties. They're
Stuffed
not
in
the
the same box.
Stuffed in the same box. And
Okay.
as long as you have this sort of two-headed monster, people aren't voting for it. So what's fascinating is the future belongs to the populace. Everything is moving to the populist structure because nobody trusts the establishment anymore.
Right.
So both on the left and the right. That's why RFK is doing so well right now.
Right.
So that's why Bernie was doing so
Thank
well.
you. I've said to
Many
liberals,
Yeah.
Bernie is Trump
for
the liberals.
For the liberals. Now,
Yeah.
unfortunately, he plays by the establishment rules too much, and hence
He stabbed him in the back twice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So he's opened up RFK wing, but it's the same thing. It's both the right and the left sharing an equal disdain for those in political power because they both occupy such different cultural spaces. That's why I think Trump's mugshot was like gold for him. Because
it seems to be.
Because in the end, if you think it through, why is he polling up in the high 20s and so forth among non-white, right, especially black? Well, the latest was it the latest poll that just came out from CNN? I forget which one showed that black men, majority of black men, this is insane, are for him. Why? Because if you think it through, how many New York billionaires does your typical non-white voter know? Zero. How many people who've been unfairly arrested and had mugshots taken of them do they know? Several. So he went from one cultural space to another cultural space, and boom, the attraction is there. So until the establishment parties figure it out, they're going to be going through incredible upheaval, political upheaval.
So you're saying we're going through a flux now. a sense of populism has pervaded the American electorate, both on the left and the right. I think that has to do with the fact that we have the lowest faith in all forms of the federal government in 40 years, I think, according to Pew Research. And both the Democrats and the Republicans, but Republicans more, are struggling what to do, how to deal with this. The public shifting. They're part of the old guard. How do we hold on and allow them? Okay.
And the left is facing that now with Israel and Hamas.
I saw
right.
That. They're massive civil war in the civil war in the left over that. Absolutely. And just super quick, within 3 days, I'd say it took for the left to turn on itself.
It's
I'm out in Cali, so I was there.
Oh, there you go.
When did it start to get bad? Were we in a perfect state of nature, and then Donald Trump came and he by himself broke everything and introduced polarization and it never existed before? Or were there signs of polarization before his presidency?
Well, the Bush presidency, right? Bush lied, people died, all this kind of stuff. It seems like it started to actually happen in the 1990s, not too long after the breakup of the Soviet Union in '91. So that's when he started to see Nigel Farage make it on the national British stage, to getting voted into the European Parliament. That's when you start seeing the so-called far right winning elections in Austria. It was long before the 2008 global financial crisis. It was just this sense that with the fall of the Soviet Union, and this is Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations thesis. With the fall of the Soviet Union, the old modern world that believed that there was a one-size-fits-all political and economic system, either it was going to be the Soviet system or it was going to be the American democratic system, this one-size-fits-all system collapsed. And people were going back to their backyards, as it were. Politics was getting radically localized, and that's when you start seeing the so-called far right rising. So it was before the GFC, it was before 2008, but it was a ripple. It was starting, and then since 2008. Those parties, the so-called popular, they're called far right, which just tells you that people were defining what political parties are on the far left. Exactly. But just the simple nationalist populist parties, they've grown by 300% in the last 10 years alone.
In America and in England.
And so in America, we don't have the parties so much, but the influence, so you have the rise of Texas. Texas was there before. Dan's been doing this for 30 years. Took a while, but it's just been exponentially exploding in the last 10 years. And it's just because it seems that the seeds that were sown post 1991 are now beginning to reap a harvest, and people are just going back to their own we've moved from a politics of ideology, where it's a one-size-fits-all way of doing things, whatever it happens to be, fascism, communism, democracy, whatever, liberalism, whatever it is. We've gone from that to an age of identity, where we're going back to region, race, religion, whatever it happens to be, to reorganize our society. And so it's just going to keep getting bigger. It's not going to fizzle out. Everybody's, like you're saying, kind of at the beginning. We've been here before the '60s.
That's what I heard from many professors.
Exactly.
We got through the '60s.
Because they're dedicated to modernity. They think modernity, progressive modernity, is the truly rational way of organizing society, the only truly progressive way of organizing society, and the world has a nice little joke for them for that.
I found it weird that I've interviewed about 100 professors on political science, political division. Many of them, at least a third, said it's not that bad.
Right.
That's fine. And I was like, really?
Right.
20, whatever side you're on, 22 cities on fire for BLM riots.
Right.
Or January 6th.
Right.
Both are bad. And the fact they happen back to back, I think, is collectively not stable.
Right.
We can argue that does not suggest stability.
Right. Exactly.
Fair. And I was like, really? After all that, this is not that bad? And they went back to the 60s were more violent.
Right.
So therefore, it's not as bad.
Therefore, it's not as bad. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you something. you've been on this earth a little while. I imagine you have some idea of what the 60s were.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Another question that I kept getting was, okay, let's say the 60s were worse because they were more violent. Caveat, I've heard some professors say now's more dangerous because in the 1960s, people believed in shared institutions. We don't have that now.
No, of course not. No, you got it. That's
one
one of
of
the key differences. That's one of the kids. So that's why you can't just defer back. Oh, we've been here through this before. No, we weren't in such an epical shift from modern to postmodern in the 60s. 60s is still the height of modernity. Vietnam, America's superpower. We're gonna enforce our will. You have another dominant modernist power, Soviet communism. Right, it was basically three major modernist powers: fascism, communism, and liberalism.
Right,
and many people believe, the progressives believed, okay, we want. This is the Fukuyama thesis, the end of history.
End of history.
Yeah,
in the 90s, Soviet Union falls.
We went
liberal democracies in.
We won. Yeah, exactly. And there's going to be. Fukuyama actually said the biggest problem we're going to face is collective boredom. Because every this is the way these guys talked to themselves. This echo chamber. We're going to be bored because we finally arrived at world peace. Everybody's liberal democracies, woke values triumph. Blah 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 blah. And then Yugoslavian wars.
You said that you're saying that didn't play out.
That did not play out.
Somewhere at the end of the Soviet, it didn't play out.
It did not play out.
Well, that's shocking. He challenges Professor Fukuyama's thesis 2 decades later.
Even Fukuyama has come out since.
I've heard that.
He published Second Thoughts.
There was too much evidence. I think he fought it for a couple of years, and then after a decade, he's like.
Well, you could say, I get it. Before the fallout in the Balkans, I get it. There was this triumphant sort of, all right, we beat them. Then the Clinton era came in, and so the Democrats were in power again. And okay, I get it. I could see it. But no, Yugoslavia, the NATO bombing of that, the rise of Putin, the rise of China, the turn of India to Hindu nationalism, Erdogan's Turkey becoming more neo-Ottoman.
The
Philippines, exactly. Africa,
Hungary.
Exactly. Viktor Orban's Hungary, Africa, the Sahel region, expelling all of the rest of the French influence. Uganda passing some of the strictest laws on LGBT out there. I mean, there's no way around it. The world was going the complete opposite of what Fukuyama said. It was going back to nation, culture, custom, tradition. It was rejecting liberalism. It was rejecting globalism. And then Trump, Brexit, and then the rise of Trump. And it was like, that's it, dude. I mean,
I remember, I'm 46. I'm old enough to remember in the 1990s, they said, we're all going to be one. And there really is going to need any international conflict. And they talked about the world man. We need to be citizens of the planet. And in the last 10 years, I've seen that concept discussed less. And I've seen more people around the planet talk about my nation, my country protects me and what I need. And wow, what an about face for what they were saying in the 1990s. They were literally talking about it's going to be the end of nation states as we know, because they just don't need it. We're connected by the internet. We have international law. We'll all be one people.
Who needs borders? Exactly.
Didn't play out that way at all. In fact, we have a rise of nationalism, nation state importance, you'd say, globally. That'd be fair.
Everywhere.
I've been myopically focused on just the domestic situation, but after seeing your speech, you seem to be suggesting that we can't separate the political division in America from the political division that we see in the rest of the world. That this is a world phenomenon for whatever reason, and it's sticking its fingers in different countries, and we're just noticing the finger in the American country. But if we look at Hungary, Brexit, Hindu nationalism in India, rise of China, etc., it's part of a larger story. A lot of Americans feel America's unique. We're special. We're nothing like the rest of the countries. How dare you compare any other country to us? How can you say that we're the same? We're part of the same phenomenon.
Well, political structures are every bit as susceptible to the same futilities and weaknesses as any other political structure. There's just no way around it. Now, the same. If the world is turning away from globalism,
That's the cause, you're saying.
That's the cause. Yeah, it's technically
Around the world, they're going, I'm tired of global.
Okay. And if we're at the apex of globalism,
right.
DC and Brussels in particular, then the world's turning away from us. That's what we have to get. That's why Ukraine didn't work out the way Biden thought it would. 85% of the world said, nah, we're just not going to go along with you.
I said that. I said that when the Anthony Blinken and Biden came on TV and goes, the world is with us.
No, they're not.
I go, I just watched the vote in the UN, and no, they're not.
No, they're not.
And
it was the United States. It was the Europe, and European nations have no choice. Brussels makes the decision. Viktor Orban was the biggest critic of the war, and he was told to shut up. Of course he didn't, but it was and Japan and South Korea, and that's basically it. Australia kind of, but that's it. Nothing in South America, nothing in Eurasia, nothing in the Middle East, nothing in Africa. No, they said forget it. Another world is rising, and this world is much more civilizational, it's more nationalist, it's more populist, and you globalists don't call the shots anymore. Now, if anyone in America thinks that doesn't affect them, I've got some oceanfront property in Arkansas.
Yeah. It's oceanfront property in Arizona. Yes, I saw that. They tried to say the world is with us.
Yeah.
You would not see it in domestic news, but if you watched global news, it was all over the place. Like, wow, 80% of the world said, hell no. And you guys are still running around saying the world's with us. I remember seeing Anthony Blinken lying boldly to the American people when the stats weren't there to back it up.
Right.
I would also add, I'm not going to get into it, but I'm simply going to say when we're looking at how America's imposition in Ukraine was out of line with the majority of world opinion, we've recently done a similar thing. So there was a UN vote on a ceasefire or a break in the fighting in Israel. So the Palestinians they're not going to comment on the issue. I'm just going to say it was America and Israel, and then the entire rest of the world voted differently. And you won't see that in domestic news, but it's all over international news where they're going, that's the second time you guys kind of just did the total opposite of what everybody else thought was reasonable. And you're calling yourself the global leader. Does that lend stability to America staying as the global leader, or does that seem to push us faster out of the commanding chair?
You got it. Yeah. And especially with the rise of BRICS plus these economic unions. That. No, they're 60% of the world's population, 60% of the world's wealth. It's and increasingly we stop buying our debt. And the moment they stop buying our debt, our bonds, we can't spend the way we've always been spending. We're not the number one nation in that sense. No, you got it. I mean, there's the world. Doug McGregor, I've had the honor of interviewing him a couple of times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he says it brilliantly. We still believe it's not in Washington D.C. They still believe it's 1991.
I've heard him say that.
Yeah.
When we were unipolar, we did.
We didn't need diplomacy. We could do whatever we wanted. Literally, you had Charles Krauthammer saying it was America's unipolar moment. If you take Fukuyama saying liberal democracy is inevitable, and then you take Krauthammer saying, well, then if it's inevitable, why wait? Let's go and take out anybody who stands in our way. Well, off to the raid. You got Iraq right there. There's Iraq,
which also ruined world opinion against America.
Of course.
So we seem to be
we keep playing that out. Oh yeah, We are the best argument against unipolarity.
I've seen McGregor say that. I've seen some other foreign policies. I think it was Jeffrey Katz or Professor Katz said that. He went to an international conference on democracy in England, and he was talking about how America is the most destabilizing force in the world. And then they told him to shut up at their international conference on democracy, where they were showing how democracies work in opposite to Russia. They told him, shut up, I don't like what you're saying. That's how we operate in a democracy, live on television. I thought that was the dumbest thing I'd seen. Definitely did make the point. So if we have the BRICS, and I believe now they have a purchasing power parity above the US dollar, and they are looking at a international currency to replace the special drawing rights from the International Monetary Fund and the US dollar as a trade currency. When we lose that privileged status as the US dollar, as the de facto trade currency, will that be good or really, really bad for America's economy?
Bad? It'll be really bad in one level. It'll be really good in another level because we have to go back to real money, real estate.
Okay.
So it creates
Okay.
a corrective where
Okay.
we can finally emancipate ourselves from these insane.
Okay.
But no, it's going to be very, very bad for kind of the imperial-minded globalist worldview. That's going to be a disaster. It will actually destroy the very resources that they depend on for that worldview.
I'm thinking Americans are going to go to Walmart and find that they only have 70% of the purchasing power
There
they
you
thought
go.
they had.
Oh yeah, no, it's going to
their
be
dollar
rough.
just doesn't go as far.
Of course, it's going to be rough. There's going to be a massive corrective, but hopefully it's a corrective that, with the ingenuity and the integrity of the American people, they'll be able to bounce back rightly after that.
You say corrective, but I see inflation like Germany in the 1930s.
We'll see. Yeah, that's one.
People died in the streets over
No, I know.
Or the Great Depression in the 1930s. That was a corrective too.
Yeah.
So it's possible for these correctives to result in massive deaths.
Pretty horrific stuff.
Doesn't always have to happen, but if we don't do this corrective right, there's going to be dead bodies in the streets.
Right.
Just because we can't take care of ourselves. Am I wildly wrong thinking that?
No, this is the risk we're taking with this stuff. Yeah, when you have this mass correction, you're hoping as they call it, a soft landing. You're hoping for that, but it could be a crash landing. That's the risk you take. Yeah.
We seem to push things until they explode in our face.
Yeah, but that's what happens when you're stuck in an old world and you're not seeing a new world arising.
That's what happened with Germany when they went into the massive inflation in the 1930s.
Sure.
They stuck with it until they
Yeah.
Why are we not having the conversation in America that there is an alternative to the US dollar for the first time in 7 decades?
Yeah.
And that the world order we created, this international rules-based world order that we love telling the rest of the world about and love telling our domestic people that we're upholding it, is going to die because of economics we can have nothing to do with. That basically was announced last year, and yet I see almost no discussion at the national stage.
Yeah, they're in denial. Yeah, I don't know what the
Both
reason
parties
is.
are.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Is that good or
uniparty,
bad for America that we aren't talking about how the dollar is going to be replaced at all?
Of course, it's good. Not
Okay.
No,
I got it. My opinion doesn't matter. That's why I ask professors.
It is disastrous.
So that's not good to not have that conversation at all.
Well, I think the good news is that because of alt media, we are having the conversation at least at some level. So I think there's more people that know about it than would have known it, back in the day with Cronkite controlling the information that's out there.
Sure.
But no, at a national level, nobody's talking about it. It's funny because I think Trump understood it with his emphasis on bilateral arrangements, sort of dismantling the liberal international order and going one-on-one. So, hey, you're going to get, most favored trade and so forth. China, we're slapping tariffs on you. And so it's bilaterality is a key to saying, look, it's a different world now. I mean, BRICS in many ways is formalized bilaterality. So we'll see if we can get him back in office. And then we're able, what made Trump so special is he did recognize that the old globalist, modern liberal international order was dead. He recognized that. That's why they hated him and they had to get rid of him, because that's where they get their power from. When you have 435 members of Congress controlling $4 trillion, that's a lot of power. That's a lot of affluence and influence. And when somebody comes in and says, you know what, there's got to be a different way of doing this. Let's scrap that and find something else. You're going to have 435 guys telling you, hell no.
Because they got into power under that system.
It's a business model. It's a business model. Most people take the ingenuity that they have and they apply to entrepreneurialism, or they get on a Fortune 500 business, or what have you. These guys went to Washington and they came in with salaries $90,000, $100,000, and they leave worth millions.
Last two questions. Thank you for your time.
Sure, my pleasure.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congress member, came out, said national divorce. We got to have one. Can't live together anymore.
That's right.
She was wildly criticized in mainstream liberal news for that. Right. But the other thing they did was they had a Utah governor, and he said, "Oh, Marjorie, you idiots!
Cox, yeah.
We don't need a national divorce. We need national marriage counseling." Professor, You're in the space of independence and division of thought. What does national marriage counseling look like that will bring us all together? And didn't Joseph Biden already do that for us?
That's right. That's right.
He said he was going to bring America together.
Yeah.
He said there would be a, quote, national calming.
You're right.
After he would. And he also said the MAGA people will realize they were wrong and come around.
Right.
Seems like that didn't happen.
Right. No.
So who's going to be elected president and is going to pull us all back together as a nation?
Yeah, it's going to be very hard. In the end, there's going to have to be a super majority.
Like 65% or
65 or more.
Not 51%.
Nope. No,
Okay.
that's not. It's just not going to.
51% is not a super majority.
51% is not a super majority, and we already saw when Trump was originally elected, Cal exit.
Yep.
Shot through the roof in terms of support. Then Biden gets in, and then Texas shoots
Yep.
through. So
Yep.
it's a social fission that can, I think, only be overcome if we have a almost Reagan-esque like supermajority, which I think is populism, because populist right, populist left can come together. They'll have clear differences. Work it out in Vermont versus Texas. That's how you do it. That's the national experiment.
Who's that person though?
I don't know. I don't
not
see
Trump.
It. No, it's not Trump.
Because half the country's not going to have
too polarized.
It's not AOC because half the country doesn't like her.
No, we don't see it.
Who do we have? Can you think of anyone with any political reputation of any significance anywhere in America who could be the person to bring both sides together?
Yeah, not now. I don't see it.
That says everything.
Yeah, right now, not now.
This guy studies this, and I've asked many professors this. No one can name one person.
Yeah.
No one. They might go. I heard somebody go Claire Klobuchar, and I'm like,
no,
maybe,
no, not even kind of, not even sort of, no.
Yeah, so I'm like,
it's too tainted. Everything's just too tainted right now. Going back to this whole notion again, if I could actually see Trump getting closest to it with the amount of minority support he's getting.
Sure,
that's the closest. So working class, non-white working class, under 30 vote who are afraid they're going to get drafted to fight these crazy wars.
Yep.
I could see it. 65%, no, but high 50s, yeah. So that's better than nothing. But like you said, we are more divided than ever at this point.
We need somebody to win with roughly 2/3 of the country and say, I have a
That's
clear majority of Americans.
That's the Victor Orban.
And we're doing this. And then the 30,
or
40,
ironically, Putin with 80% approval rate.
Right. Yeah. Well, and his approval rating went up.
It's even higher.
I think it was Lloyd Austin went on TV and said, our goal is to destroy Russia and ruin their capability to exist. They just played that on Russian TV, and his popularity went up.
Exactly.
Well, Putin had been saying they're trying to kill us.
Right.
And we said, you're crazy. And then we had our top defense official literally say that on television.
Sure. Admitting
literally
regime changes.
Giving him everything he's been saying for years. And you never heard that in the West, going, that was a big mistake. You realize you just gave Putin his propaganda piece packaged in gold.
According to the media, we don't make mistakes.
Yeah, right.
As long as you're a Democrat or establishment, Mitt Romney and so forth, we don't make mistakes.
Just like how we won the Syrian war against Russia and Libya as a stable democracy.
Exactly.
We don't make mistakes. You got it. No,
we always leave it. We always leave it cleaner than when we found it.
Exactly. Go to Libya. It's not a basket case. The UN doesn't not have a freaking clue how to keep it together. They don't have 4 different militias fighting each other, killing each other. And ISIS and Al-Qaeda aren't in the country now, making it worse. With Russia, America, and the UN all disagreeing with each other.
Right.
Nothing like that happened. This was an Obama project with Hillary Clinton, so it worked out perfectly. That's all you need to know. Last question. I was just lying on everything I just said. Last question. You said something that grabbed my attention because I heard Professor Fossey say something similar. And it's something I found similar in my research, talking to 100 professors. It goes something like this. You said, well, if America's able to survive this transition and stay stable, you may not need Texas. You may not need to break out. But it's probably not going to happen, in which case you'll have to. Sounds like what you're saying is when the center enters into a period of chaos, a lack of being able to hold on, that's when the peripheries break off.
True. Yeah, there is something called bootlegging in politics, which is a funny little term that's used by Eric Kaufman at the University of London. It's happened in Europe and it's happening here, when the establishment parties refuse to talk about what the majority of the people are concerned about, they look for bootleggers. They look for candidates outside of the center to represent them. And so that's how Europe has seen the so-called far right, these nationalist populist parties, rising exponentially. Giorgia Meloni, Marine Le Pen, you name it. When the center right and center left, when the McConnells and the McCarthys and the Pelosi's try to push out the concerns of an increasing number of people from the conversation of the public square, they will look elsewhere. They're not going to go silent into the night. They will look to a New York billionaire who never ran for office prior to that as their champion, or they will go to a Christian conservative woman with a party that 3 years ago had like 0.5% support and make her prime minister. They will go and look for a bootlegger who's going to give them what they want. And that's what we're seeing.
The Italian five-star movement?
So this is going to be the Brothers of Italy.
Okay.
Yeah, Brothers of Italy. So it was really Lega. Lega had all the muscle in terms of popular opinions of Matteo Salvini and so forth. They were small. The Brothers of Italy were small. They were even more conservative.
Okay.
They're much more small. They were considered more Christian conservative and so forth. And then when Matteo Salvini broke the five-star coalition that Steve Bannon brought together, because it was really populist left, populist right.
Oh.
That's when the Brothers of Italy exploded. We saw Giorgia Meloni speak in 2019, and the headliner was Matteo Salvini. Giorgia Meloni was just somebody who spoke at like 2:00 in the afternoon,
right? And
the place was on fire.
Right.
She gave one of the best political speeches I've ever seen. You can see it on YouTube. It's fully, the subtitles are there in English and everything like that. Absolutely stunning. It was for the World Congress of Families, pure, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-freedom. Absolutely astonishing. She made Salvini look tame by comparison, and everybody who was there was like, keep your eye on her. She's skyrocketing because she's talking about things that no one else in Rome will talk about. And boom, here she is, bootlegger.
That reminds me that even when we talked about how the African-American vote for Trump has recently shifted. But I remember when Trump got elected and there was a lot of anger at African-Americans. African-Americans were angry at Trump largely, but you'd have a couple of them and they would do this. I don't like Trump. Oh, I hate him. But when he went on the debate stage with Hillary Clinton and said, I buy both parties out, and
Dave
you know
Chappelle.
how I get to take, I get to
Chappelle.
take all my taxes, and she knows what I'm talking about. They were like, thank you, somebody telling that. I saw Dave Chappelle talk trash on Trump and then say, thank God. One person in all of America actually said it.
It was again one of the most beautiful things ever said publicly. I know both parties are totally corrupt. Oh, really? How do you know that? Because I'm the corrupting influence.
I bought them off.
I bought them off.
Yeah.
I know, and I don't need their money.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do what's right.
And the tax code is for people like me
Exactly.
because we buy people who like off. And then he pointed to Clinton, and she said nothing.
Yeah.
She said, watch the debate. She said absolutely nothing to defeat that point. She went to another point. So never even acknowledged the point, never tried to defeat it in a debate, which is what you're supposed to do in a debate. She just moved on to another thing. It was just left out. And I think the thinking is, it was a truth bomb.
Yeah, it was.
I can't attack a truth bomb.
Yeah,
Might as well just don't look there.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm over here now doing my song and dance.
Yeah, exactly.
So everything's going to be okay in the next 5 years, and everyone's going to calm down and realize that we need to have a kumbaya moment. Or you don't see anything like that?
No, this is going to have to play itself out. Birth is painful, and we are going into a new world. And we're the apex of the old one. Right. So we're going to be the last ones who want to go in.
That makes a lot of sense. We built this financial system, and we love holding it up over other people and then criticizing.
And they've
them.
left. They basically left with the BRICS Plus. They've
and
left.
I think that's our fault. I don't want to get into it, but I think it was.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 1,000%. That didn't have to happen. No.
What I saw was in the 90s and 2000s, we said, world order, you guys should join this thing, and it's great. And Russia and China go, okay, we'll kind of experiment. And then they did it for a few years, And then they started noticing, we're like, well, we're not going to follow international law on this thing. We're going to do our own thing. And then we're not going to follow it here. We're going to do our own thing. And then we're not going to follow it here. And they're going, what are you guys trying to sell us here? This thing that you violate?
Yeah. Exactly.
Never saw that in domestic news. You guys are stupid and crazy.
Right.
We ignored them for a couple of years when they made those complaints, and then BRICS started.
Right.
And I'm like, we did this to ourselves.
Right. Sure. Absolutely.
We can't live by our own rules.
Yeah.
People in China and Russia may not be pro-democratic, but they're not idiots.
Yeah, and they abide by international law. They do. They have no choice. They have to.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that where
They have to.
they talked to China about the Uyghurs.
Yeah.
And they go, this is international law breaking. And she goes, let's get something straight.
Yeah.
We had a Muslim problem and we imprisoned them. You had a Muslim problem and you killed 1 million of them. Who's more violating international law?
Right.
And the American diplomat had nothing to say.
No,
that was the end
true.
of it. We are in no place to
The
criticize
day of
anybody.
us lecturing the rest of the world is over. It just can't happen. So even if we're concerned about the Uyghurs, there's all kinds of things we could do. We could get all these European nations together, come to China, say, look, we've got a history, we've got a shared history. Things that you're doing is kind of sensitive to us.
Yeah.
And we really like to maybe discuss it with you. But the days of us going to them and saying, hey, here's what you got to do, no diplomacy, those are over, man. They're just like, they've got the same smile you got, literally, which was, Xi just sits back and goes, guys, you don't know what time it is.
Anthony Blinken's traveling around the world, and he said, the world's with us on Ukraine. That was a straight up lie.
Straight up lie.
Then he said, we care about Palestinian kids, and it bothers me in the gut when I see them killed. And then a few days later, he had to say, well, actually, the suffering of Palestinians. We have been out of line on this issue with world opinion from the beginning, and the guy looks like a fool because he keeps going on TV saying, everybody's with us. And then you look at the reading and you go, not one Arab country bothered to meet him.
Nope.
They
insulted him. They turned their back on him. They didn't even. Yeah.
Turkey sent a regional representative to meet him.
Saw that. You saw
it was like the lieutenant mayor or something. And like,
one of the lowest of the low in their ranks.
It was clearly an insult, and they filmed it. And they
it was
here's
a
what we did to the
gigantic
Americans.
insult. They would never have done that to a Henry Kissinger or anything. It was a gigantic insult. Absolutely.
We'll leave it there.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Right back at you. Thank you.